My husband's sister treated him like a failure for years. I finally stood up for him and uncovered a web of family secrets and childhood trauma. I, 32F, have reached my breaking point with my sister-in-law Melissa's 38F. Constant need to one-up everyone, especially my husband Eric, 34M. This has been going on for years, and I can't take it anymore. Eric and I met about 8 years ago at a tech conference in San Francisco. I was there representing my marketing firm, and he was giving a presentation on a new software he'd developed. I was immediately impressed by his intelligence and passion, but what really drew me in was his kindness. After his talk, I saw him patiently explaining complex concepts to an elderly attendee who was clearly out of his depth. That's just who Eric is, always willing to help others, even at his own expense. We started dating soon after, and everything was perfect except for one thing. Eric's older sister, Melissa. From the moment I met her at a family dinner, I could sense this weird, competitive vibe from her. At first, I brushed it off as normal sibling rivalry, but as time went on, it became clear it was much more than that. Melissa would constantly bring up her job as a financial advisor, dropping hints about her big clients and the deals she was closing. She'd talk about her expensive vacations, her designer clothes, her country club membership. Anything she could to make herself seem superior. What made it worse was that Eric would just smile and nod, never challenging her or standing up for himself. When I asked Eric about it, he'd just shrug and say, "That's just how Mel is. She needs the boost sometimes." I later learned that this dynamic had its roots in their childhood. Their parents, both successful academics, had always pushed them to excel. Melissa, being older, felt the pressure more acutely. She struggled with dyslexia, which went undiagnosed for years, making her feel stupid compared to her naturally gifted little brother. Eric, sensing her distress, started downplaying his own achievements to make her feel better. It became a habit that carried into adulthood. I tried to be understanding, but it was hard to watch, especially because Eric is incredibly successful in his own right. He's risen through the ranks at his tech company and is now a senior engineer leading a team of developers. He's been granted several patents and has even been featured in tech magazines. But Melissa acts like he's still some entry-level programmer barely scraping by. Things came to a head last weekend at a family barbecue. Melissa and her husband Greg, 40M, were there with their kids, along with Eric's parents and a few other relatives. Everything was going fine until Melissa started in on her usual routine. She was going on and on about how Greg just got a huge promotion and how they were thinking of buying a vacation home in the Hamptons. Then she looked at Eric and said, "Don't worry, little bro. Maybe someday you'll be able to afford a nice trip too. Keep working hard." I saw Eric's face fall for just a second before he plastered on that fake smile. Something in me snapped. Before I could stop myself, I said, "Actually, Melissa, Eric's doing just fine. He was promoted to senior engineer last month and got a significant raise. We're planning a month-long trip to Europe next summer." The look on Melissa's face was priceless. She stammered for a moment before recovering and saying, "Oh, well, that's nice. I'm sure it'll be fun backpacking and staying in hostels. Greg and I prefer luxury resorts, but to each their own." I was about to respond when Eric put his hand on my arm and gave me a look. I bit my tongue, but I was fuming inside. Later that night, Eric and I had a huge argument. He said I embarrassed Melissa and that I should apologize. I refused, saying that Melissa's the one who should apologize for years of putting him down. Eric insisted that Melissa doesn't mean any harm and that she just has some insecurity issues. He said if pretending to be more successful than him makes her feel better, what's the harm in letting her have that? I told him the harm is that it's disrespectful to him and sets a terrible example for our kids. We have a 5-year-old daughter, Lily, and 3-year-old son, Max. The argument ended with Eric sleeping on the couch and me getting a nasty text from Melissa accusing me of trying to humiliate her. Now Eric's parents are involved, saying I need to make things right with Melissa. I'm at my wit's end. I love Eric, but I can't stand watching his sister treat him like this anymore. It's not just about the constant comparisons and put-downs. It's about the way it affects our whole family dynamic. For instance, last Christmas, Melissa made a big show of giving everyone expensive gifts, then made a point of saying she hoped Eric and I liked our modest presents. Our daughter, Lily, asked me later why Aunt Melissa thought we were poor. It broke my heart to see how this behavior was already impacting our children's perceptions. Or there was the time when Eric's company won a major industry award for a project he led. Instead of congratulating him, Melissa spent the entire celebratory dinner talking about a small local business award she'd won years ago. Eric just sat there, his achievement completely overshadowed. I've tried talking to Eric about this multiple times over the years. I've suggested family counseling, setting boundaries, even limiting our interactions with Melissa. But Eric always brushes it off, saying it's not a big deal, and that's just how families are. But I don't think this is normal or healthy. I know Eric had a challenging childhood in some ways. Despite being academically gifted, he struggled socially. He was bullied in school for being a nerd, and Melissa was often his only friend. I think that's part of why he's so reluctant to confront her now. He still sees her as his protector in some ways, even though that dynamic hasn't been true for decades. I've also tried talking to Eric's parents about the situation, but they seem oblivious. They laugh off Melissa's behavior as just a little sibling rivalry and tell me I'm being too sensitive. It's clear where Melissa learned to dismiss others' feelings. I'm worried about the long-term effects of this dynamic on our family. I don't want our children growing up thinking it's okay to put others down to make yourself feel better. I don't want Eric to continue diminishing his own worth to prop up his sister's ego. And selfishly, I'm tired of biting my tongue and playing along with Melissa's delusions of grandeur. Am I wrong for finally standing up to her? Should I just apologize and let things go back to how they were? I don't want to cause problems in Eric's family, but I also don't think it's healthy to keep enabling Melissa's behavior. How can I make Eric see that the situation is harmful to everyone involved? I'm running out of patience and ideas. Update 1. Thank you all for your responses and support. A lot has happened since my last post, so I wanted to give you an update. After reading through all your comments, I realized that this issue runs deeper than just Melissa's behavior. It's also about Eric's inability to stand up for himself and set boundaries with his family. Your insights helped me approach the situation from a new angle. I decided to have a heart-to-heart with Eric. I waited until the kids were in bed and we had some quiet time alone. I started by telling him how much I love him and our family and how I'm worried about the impact Melissa's behavior is having on all of us. I explained how Lily had asked me why. Aunt Melissa always says Daddy's not good at his job. That seemed to really hit home for Eric. We talked for hours, delving into childhood memories and family dynamics I'd never fully understood before. Eric opened up about why he lets Melissa treat him this way. He told me about an incident from when they were teenagers. Melissa, struggling with undiagnosed dyslexia and feeling like a failure compared to her genius little brother, had a mental health crisis. Eric found her in the bathroom contemplating self-harm. He talked her down and promised he'd always be there for her, that he'd never let her feel less than again. This promise made by a scared 14-year-old trying to protect his sister has shaped their relationship ever since. Eric admitted that he's tired of always playing the supportive little brother role, but he's terrified that if he pushes back, Melissa might spiral into depression again. We also talked about Eric's own struggles. Despite his academic success, he dealt with severe social anxiety as a kid. Melissa was often his only friend and defender against bullies. This created a complex dynamic where Eric felt both protective of Melissa and indebted to her. As we talked, Eric began to see how this childhood dynamic was no longer serving either of them. He realized that by constantly diminishing himself, he wasn't actually helping Melissa. He was just enabling her insecurities and preventing her from developing genuine self-esteem. We agreed that this situation isn't healthy for anyone involved, including Melissa. Eric admitted that he's noticed how our kids are starting to internalize some unhealthy attitudes from observing these family interactions. This was a major wake-up call for him. After much discussion, we decided to approach this as a team. Eric agreed to have a serious talk with Melissa, with me there for support. We invited Melissa and Greg over for dinner last night to clear the air. The conversation was tense from the start. Melissa immediately tried to play the victim, saying I had humiliated her at the barbecue. But Eric surprised me by speaking up. He calmly told Melissa that while he loves her, Her constant need to put him down and exaggerate her own success is hurtful and needs to stop. Melissa didn't take it well at first. She got defensive and tried to brush it off as just joking around. But Eric stood his ground. He brought up specific instances over the years where Melissa had made him feel small or insignificant. He explained how it affected him, me, and our kids. To my surprise, Greg actually backed us up. He admitted that he's been uncomfortable with Melissa's behavior for a while, but didn't know how to address it. He shared a few instances where Melissa's competitiveness had caused problems in their own marriage. This seemed to be a wake-up call for Melissa. There were tears and raised voices. Melissa brought up their childhood, how she always felt overshadowed by Eric's achievements. Eric acknowledged her struggles but pointed out that they're adults now and it's time to move past those old hurts. By the end of the night, we had made some progress. Melissa apologized for her behavior, though I'm not sure how sincere it was. She agreed to try to be more mindful of her words and actions in the future. We made plans for her to spend more one-on-one time with Eric, hoping that rebuilding their bond as siblings might help alleviate some of her insecurities. Eric and I made it clear that while we love Melissa, we won't tolerate any more put-downs or competitions. We're setting firm boundaries and are prepared to limit contact if necessary. We also suggested that Melissa might benefit from talking to a therapist about her feelings of inadequacy. She was resistant to the idea, but Greg seemed interested in pursuing couples counseling. It's a start, but I know we have a long road ahead. Eric is going to talk to his parents next to address their role in enabling this dynamic. I'm proud of him for finally standing up for himself, but I'm also wary. Years of ingrained behavior don't change overnight. We're cautiously optimistic, but we're also prepared for potential backlash or for Melissa to fall back into old habits. Eric is struggling with guilt, worried that he's somehow betrayed his sister by standing up to her. I'm doing my best to support him and remind him that setting healthy boundaries is an act of love, not betrayal. For now, we're focusing on our own family unit. We're having ongoing discussions with our kids about self-worth and the importance of celebrating others' successes. We're also working on being more open about Eric's accomplishments at work, teaching our children that it's okay to be proud of yourself without putting others down. I'll keep you all updated on how things progress. Thank you again for all your support and advice. It's been invaluable in helping us navigate this difficult situation. Update 2. It's been a few weeks since my last update, and I wanted to share some developments in our situation with Melissa. After our confrontation with Melissa and Greg, Eric had a long talk with his parents. He explained how their treatment of Melissa as the struggling child and him as the successful one had created an unhealthy dynamic that persisted into adulthood. His parents were initially defensive, arguing that they had always tried to support both their children equally. But as Eric shared more about his experiences growing up, how he felt pressure to downplay his achievements, how he was often expected to help Melissa with her schoolwork at the expense of his own studies, how he never felt he could share his own struggles because Melissa's always seemed more pressing. His parents began to see how their actions had unintentionally caused harm. There were tears and apologies. Eric's mom admitted that she had always felt guilty about not recognizing Melissa's dyslexia sooner, and that guilt had led her to overcompensate by focusing more attention on Melissa. Eric's dad confessed that he had leaned more heavily on Eric emotionally because he found it easier to connect with his son than his daughter. They agreed to stop pressuring Eric to always accommodate Melissa and promised to address Melissa's behavior if they noticed it in the future. They also said they would reach out to Melissa to have a similar conversation about family dynamics. It was a difficult discussion, but Eric said he felt like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. As for Melissa, there's been some improvement, but it's not all smooth sailing. She's made an effort to tone down her competitive comments, especially around the kids. However, old habits die hard, and there have been a few slip-ups. Last week, we all attended a family dinner at Eric's parents' house. Melissa started to make a comment about her new car being more expensive than ours, but she caught herself mid-sentence and changed the subject. It was awkward, but it showed she's trying. The most significant change has been in Eric. He's become more assertive not just with Melissa, but in other areas of his life too. He stood up to a coworker who was trying to take credit for his work, and he's been more vocal about his accomplishments at home. He even submitted a proposal for a promotion at work, something he'd been hesitant to do before because he didn't want to outshine Melissa in their parents' eyes. However, not everything is perfect. Melissa has been somewhat distant since our confrontation. She's been canceling plans and making excuses not to get together. Part of me is relieved for the break, but I'm also concerned about the long-term impact on the family dynamics. Eric is struggling with feelings of guilt. He's happy to have set boundaries, but he's worried about damaging his relationship with his sister. I've reassured him that he's done the right thing and that it's up to Melissa now to adjust and respect our boundaries. We've also had to deal with some fallout from extended family members. Eric's aunt called to scold us for upsetting Melissa and disrupting family harmony. We stood our ground and explained the situation, but it's clear that not everyone understands or supports our decision to confront the issue. Despite these challenges, Eric and I feel like we're on the right path. We're committed to maintaining healthy boundaries while also leaving the door open for a better relationship with Melissa if she's willing to change. We're taking it one day at a time and focusing on our own family unit. Eric has been spending more quality time with the kids, making a point to talk about his work and accomplishments in a positive way. We've been having open discussions about self-worth and standing up for yourself. Lily, our daughter, seems to be picking up on the change. The other day, she proudly showed us a drawing she made at school and said, "I did a good job, right? It's okay to say when you do something well." It was a small moment, but it felt like a huge win. Update 3. It's been about 2 months since my last update, and I wanted to share the latest developments in our ongoing situation with Melissa and the family. The past couple of months have been a roller coaster of emotions and events. After a period of distance, Melissa reached out to Eric for a one-on-one conversation. Eric was apprehensive, but agreed to meet her for coffee at a neutral location. To his surprise, Melissa opened up about some deep-seated insecurities she's been struggling with for years. She admitted that her competitive behavior stemmed from feeling like she could never measure up to Eric in their parents' eyes. She talked about how her struggles with dyslexia had affected her self-esteem and how she had always felt stupid compared to her genius little brother. Melissa told Eric that after our confrontation, she had started seeing a therapist to work on her issues. She apologized again for her past behavior and asked for patience as she tries to change. She also shared that she and Greg had started couples counseling, which was helping them communicate better. Eric was moved by her vulnerability and assured her that he loves her and wants to have a healthy relationship moving forward. He also opened up about his own struggles, sharing how her behavior had affected him over the years. It was a tearful but healing conversation for both of them. This conversation seems to have been a turning point. Since then, we've had a few family gatherings and Melissa's behavior has noticeably improved. She's making an effort to show genuine interest in Eric's life without turning it into a competition. At a recent family dinner, she actually asked Eric about his latest project at work and listened attentively without trying to one-up him. There have been a few awkward moments, but overall, the atmosphere has been much more positive. As for Eric, he's continuing to work on being more assertive. He's had several conversations with his parents about their family dynamics and slowly, but surely, they're all making progress in changing long-standing patterns. Eric's parents have made an effort to acknowledge both their children's achievements equally, which has helped ease some of the tension. Our kids have noticed the change too. Lily recently mentioned that she likes it when Aunt Melissa comes over now because she's nicer and listens more. Max, who used to hide whenever Melissa visited, has started to warm up to her. Last week, he even showed her his favorite toy car, something he'd never done before. However, we're remaining cautiously optimistic. We know that real, lasting change takes time and effort. We're committed to maintaining our boundaries while also supporting Melissa's efforts to improve. There have been a few bumps along the way. Eric's aunt is still giving us the cold shoulder, and there was an uncomfortable moment at a recent family birthday party when Melissa started to slip into old habits, comparing her cake baking skills to mine. But Eric was able to gently redirect the conversation, and Melissa quickly caught herself. One unexpected development has been a shift in my relationship with Greg, Melissa's husband. He reached out to me privately to thank us for confronting the issue. He admitted that he'd been unhappy with Melissa's behavior for years but hadn't known how to address it. We've started to form a bit of an alliance, supporting each other and maintaining these new, healthier family dynamics. Eric and I are stronger than ever, united in our approach to these family issues. We're focusing on fostering open communication, setting healthy boundaries, and modeling positive behavior for our kids. It's been a difficult journey, but I believe we're coming out stronger on the other side. Last weekend, we had a small breakthrough. Melissa called to congratulate Eric on a recent achievement at work, something she'd heard about from their parents. There was no comparison, no backhanded compliment, just genuine pride in her brother's success. Eric was touched, and for the first time in years, I saw him truly relaxed around his sister. We know there's still a long road ahead. Old habits and deep-seated insecurities don't disappear overnight. But we're hopeful. We're taking it one day at a time, celebrating the small victories, and working together to build a healthier, happier family dynamic. I want to thank everyone who offered advice and support throughout this journey. Your insights and encouragement have been invaluable. I'll continue to update if there are any significant developments, but for now, we're cautiously optimistic about the future of our family relationships.